Hi, I'm Jay Wilson.
And I'm Andy.
Hi, I'm Jay Wilson.
And I'm Andy.
Hi. There's an airplane. Take 17. Hi, I'm Jay Wilson.
And I'm Andy Kendeigh. Coming up tonight on the Rose Bowl Report, we'll take a closer look at a certain Badger walk-on who's making a huge contribution to the Wisconsin defense this year.
And of course, the game will mean a lot to guys like Ron Dane and Tom Burke. But what about guys that won't even get into the game? What that means to the future of Badger football. That and more tonight on the Rose Bowl Report after Monday Night Football.
Stand by. Is this thing on?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, hello.
You're listening to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
This just in.
Breaking news to report.
We are live.
Old newscasters
Can we just say former?
Sure. Former newscasters reunite behind the mic after more than 20 years.
Old news is good news.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Old News with Dan and Carrie. We're glad you're here with us because we have a special guest for you today.
We sure do. To Midwest TV audiences, Andy Kendeigh is a local ABC TV sports director, anchor, reporter, and was named Nebraska's Sportscaster of the Year in 2014. To me, Andy Kendeigh is the best college buddy of my husband. In fact, he's the matchmaker who introduced me to my husband, was the best man at our wedding, and is the godfather of my son, Brady. Dan and I worked with Andy on the weekends at WKOW TV in Madison, Wisconsin in the late 1990s, and we are thrilled to welcome Andy Kendeigh to Old News. Hi, Andy.
Carrie, how are you? Dan, great to see you guys.
Great
so
to
good to see you. My gosh. And we talked to your sister, Kit Kendeigh, who was also on the station.
I am so sorry.
Part of the dynamic duo, the Kendeigh
It was
twins.
Amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Watch Kendeigh on the weekends. It never stuck. WKOW.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
never
like
stuck.
it. I like
But
it.
yeah, Kit's doing great. She's still in Madison. Well, she's in Verona, but she's still
Yeah.
in the Madison area. So every time I go up to see her and make an excuse to go see, and Jay's there too,
Yeah.
so I get to pop in with Jay every once in a while. So yeah, it's been kind of a cool deal, and it's weird being out in Omaha here. There's such a connection. It's a weird deal. Like, Madison and Omaha are very similar markets, and the dynamics with the colleges are very similar. So it's kind of a unique deal.
And you
Kind of an
went
arch
from
rival.
Madison to Milwaukee to Omaha, correct?
Correct. So, after, matchmaking you up with your husband, I felt
You
like
said my work here is done.
Yeah, my work here is done. So I moved on to Milwaukee, spent 11 years at WISN, which is the ABC affiliate, and also a Hearst station. And then in the year 2010, the Hearst station in Omaha was looking for a sports director. This is where my wife grew up. Her mom was still with us. And so that's when I made the jump. So I've been here for 14 years, if you can believe that. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long were you at KOW before going to ISN?
Well, I was there for 9 years, technically on the air for about 6. So, this is stuff that you can't get away with today. I was an intern for Jay for 3+ years. And, the paycheck was a Diet Pepsi here and there, and a Burger King double cheeseburger and Rocky Rococo's dinner. He would buy me dinner at least once a week. So, so 3.5 years I interned there. So I technically wasn't really working there per se, but I wasn't on the air. So, and then it was myself, Mark Rappentine, and Jay when I first started back then. So I was there from 93. So my first football season was that magical Rose Bowl year. How about that? I was like, are they all like this?
Good.
You were the lucky charm.
Is this always the way this goes?
Yeah. This is so fun. I don't know why you guys were complaining all those years.
Yeah, really. Now, Jay told us a story we have to confirm with you. He said when you started as an intern, you maybe didn't have the work ethic that you later were famous for. You have an awesome work ethic. He said at the beginning, he said, thanks, but no thanks after a little while. Can you confirm or deny?
I can confirm. He actually gave me the speech, and I've heard it from I've heard it since from Jay, and in fact I've used it myself. I've adopted it where it's we need to give other people opportunities. You've got a bright future, but maybe just it's time for you to look elsewhere for another internship, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
And that's what happened. I can tell you what happened. It was my junior, here comes the excuses. You ready for it? I had a
Yes.
ton
Let
of
'em
stuff
rip.
going
Let 'em
on.
rip.
Yeah, I had a ton of stuff going on with the old fraternity. Your husband can back me up on this. Aaron and I were doing big things at the old fraternity house, and there was a lot, I was
They were
taking a lot of.
DJing, right? You
Yeah,
had
we were
DJ
DJ.
gig?
We had a DJ company, and I had to go to school every once in a while. And let's just say that interning wasn't the top priority until the summer, because I had banked. You know what? I'll get my feet wet this first or the second
Mhm.
semester, my junior year, and then in the summer I'll really hit it hard. And about May, Jay was like, "We're going to give other people opportunities," and I'm like, "I'll do whatever it takes. Like I'll come in on weekends. I'll come in." I'll do whatever. I'll log tape, whatever you need me to do. And so Jay's like, you know what? Why don't you come in on Saturdays? Paul Johnson needs some help. So for every weekend, in fact, I came in Saturdays, I came in Sundays. I helped Paul with his shows, and it's one of those things. I didn't have a key card. Sometimes I would show up and nobody was in yet, and so I would just have to sit in that lobby. This is before the renovation at WKW, and so I learned my lesson the hard way. But
Yeah.
ever since then, but that is true. Jay tried to get rid of me, and I wouldn't go. I was like a bad penny.
So there was no period of time where you were not working. I mean, you just kind of went from helping them out during the weeks to the weekends right away.
In terms of when I went from interning to getting the full-time job?
No, like when he basically said, "Hey, go look for other opportunities." You went right to Saturdays, or was there a period?
No. Yeah, no. I went right to the weekends.
Okay.
With Paul, but not where Jay. Jay was done with me. So
Right.
Jay was like, you know what? I'll give him to the weekend guy, and the weekend guy can deal with this muckety muck. So this knucklehead. And so I worked with Paul Johnson, and then there was a group of us. Like on Sundays at the station, there was a group of us interns, and there was probably 3 or 4 of us some weeks. It was almost like, what are we all doing here? But it was cool. We had a great group, a bunch of guys that really got along and helped produce the show. And looking back on it, I was like, that was kind of an interesting dynamic. Some Sundays there would be 3 of us in there you guys
and only one on the payroll, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be.
I think he paid us. Yeah, I think we got paid in pizza. You buy a couple pizzas and we go from there. But it was a blast. You can say all you want about people who've been down the road and have been in business for a while, and there's nothing like that first job and just the stuff that you went through and the crazy, stupid stories. And you're like, how did we survive that? And B, why did we keep doing it? But that kind of goes back to the love of, you got to have the love of what you're doing, or else you're going to be miserable. And that's why people get out.
Right.
Not to say that's you guys.
No.
Not to say that's
Look
you
at
guys.
us here.
I mean, come
We
on.
waited 20 years and then said, let's do that again in a totally different form. From the comfort of our own homes, or my parents' patio. In this case, as I'm on vacation, I'm not using my background, even though Dan's is now real. He built his own real background. I was using virtual background. And that was Andy's first question. He said, is that a green screen, or that a screen behind you? I said, no, this is my parents' view. Not bad, huh?
It's
Well,
gorgeous.
If you're just listening at home, it's a beautiful landscaped, like hardscaped patio with a wall, and then there's the mountain range behind her in Arizona. So
Yes.
picture
Green Valley,
that.
Arizona.
Behind my pegboard wall is the Hawaiian Islands, but I just don't like to brag. Oh.
That's great.
But I
That's
digress as usual.
Right. We say that
Andy,
a lot.
were you a broadcast major at UW?
I was proud J School graduate. I was a double sequence, just in case this TV thing didn't work out. I doubled sequence in public relations, which who knows? You're never too young to pivot, as I'm looking at you guys.
Yeah.
So.
You could have a podcast someday too. You never know.
Right.
I probably have a couple.
Keep dreaming,
That's
Andy.
right. I've got a couple ideas. I'll circle back with you guys.
Yeah.
All right, great. We'll take it. So then you're in Nebraska now with the Huskers, our arch nemesis here in Wisconsin. But we've kind of had your number in some sports, but not this year in basketball.
No, not well. Early you did. You won the first one, and then in the second one it kind of went the other way. But I will tell you, Wisconsin is the burr in the saddle of Nebraska football fans, because for years in the Big Ten West, the winning streak is incredible. I think they've only beaten Nebraska has only beaten Wisconsin once, since joining the Big Ten. And that was the same year, if you remember, that Wisconsin was in that Big Ten championship game and kicked the crap out of Nebraska in the final as a third place representative of that division, because the two other teams in their division were ineligible for the championship. So that it's an interesting dynamic between Nebraska and Wisconsin fans. There's a lot of crossovers with Barry Alvarez being a Nebraska former player and graduate, as a Wisconsin legend, obviously. Yeah. Former AD here at Nebraska, Sean Eichhorst, who obviously was with Barry at Wisconsin in the administration side. So there's Chucky Hepburn, who's a point guard for the basketball team. He played high school basketball at Bellevue West, legendary high school player, which is 10 minutes from the station here that I work at. Yeah, it's right down the street. So there's a ton of crossovers that is pretty interesting.
How about being a sports director versus you were a reporter, anchor in Madison? You were a reporter. Did you anchor in Madison as well? I mean, in Milwaukee as well?
Yep.
So I was both of those.
Yeah, I was the number 3 guy in Milwaukee from 99 to about 2002, 2003. And then I was the weekend guy from 03 to 2010. But yeah, it is a different deal. Like I always thought that, Dan and Dan Needles, who's my boss in Milwaukee, and then obviously Jay Wilson in Madison, they have you don't really know it until you're in the position, but there's so much other stuff going on than just going out and covering a game here and there. There's so much stuff, planning purposes, hiring purposes, so many administrative stuff that you don't really realize when you are not in that position. And so it's a different deal. I think it's a different balancing act. It just comes with the job.
Yeah.
So you had a 3-member team in Milwaukee. In Madison, you guys had a 3-member team too, other than all the interns, right?
Yeah. Other than the intern. In fact, when I started, you guys like this. So when I started in 1993, I was like a half person. So I was this big. I was half of a person.
Yeah.
And I was a half of a hire. I was like 20 hours a week. I think I made $4.25 an hour. My paycheck, I still have a couple stubs from the old, because remember, we were owned by TAC Communications. Yep. I think I have a paycheck that my bi-weekly, like once every other week, paycheck was like 190 and change. So thank goodness for Chili's, because Chili's was my supplemental income. And
with my husband.
With your husband, I gave you sizzle service, and I actually made more. I actually had to take a pay cut to go into TV from Chili's when I got the job. That tells you where the pay's at. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been hearing that from a lot of our other podcast guests as well.
But you stuck it out.
Yeah, well, you did. Yeah, but I got, I've listened to a couple, I had to do a little homework. So I got to listen to a couple of your podcasts. Very, very nicely done.
Thank you.
And the line that stuck with me from Lisa Fielding was, don't be money motivated. You cannot be money motivated to get into this field. And it really struck a chord. I'm like, you know what? I've never heard it said that way, but it's so true.
Yeah.
You don't be money motivated. I just talked to a group of college kids last week, and I said, if you are money motivated, then you are not going to be happy doing what you're doing. Everybody thinks you get into going to sports, you cover sports for a living. Yeah, people forget they have sports on the weekend. Nebraska plays a football game the day after Thanksgiving every year, so you're working Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving. Christmas with bowl games. Well, Nebraska hasn't had to worry about that in recent years, but normally Nebraska with bowl games, you have to juggle Christmas and holidays and stuff like that, in addition to working, your normal schedule. It's a tough deal, and it's a challenging thing, and I understand why people pivot career-wise, and I also understand why people stay in it. So I look back, last summer was 30 years in the business on air, and I don't know, it's like that Talking Heads song where he says, how did I get here?
Yes.
How did I get here?
Same as it ever was.
Yeah, and you may ask yourself.
Yeah.
I've asked myself plenty of times.
30 years.
But clearly, 30 years, you love what you do then, because you have lasted 30 years. And, talking to Jay the same way, he was almost 40 years. So he was like 10 ahead of you in that, and you're probably heading there too. But when you have those days where you're like, enough of this, how do you motivate yourself to keep going? What's kept you in the game?
Well, let's see. What did I do last night? Because I had one of those days yesterday. And I'm not lying. they upgraded our computer system, and I've turned into the old guy. Hey, how do you get this thing to work? How do you import clips? Yesterday we did it one way. We don't do it anymore like this. I mean, this is crazy.
Just like when we start every podcast, that's how we
I know.
are.
It's like, wait,
Yeah.
Dan, how do I change my background? How do I press record?
Yes. Isn't it crazy though? I mean,
Yes.
thank goodness for the younger kids here. They give you life in terms of energy, and they give you technological knowledge, because I was lost yesterday. So a couple people kind of kept me on the straight and narrow, said, okay, it's going to be okay for one, and two, this is how you do it. And seriously, you're supported by the family. I've been married, obviously Carrie knows Wendy very well. So, I mean, we've been married 24 years now, and we got three great kids, all daughters. I've got a sophomore at Nebraska now, a senior in high school, and an 8th grader. And my senior in high school is going to go to Nebraska as well. That was my wife's alma mater. And thankfully they have learned to live with Dad during his crazy times. And this is a crazy time, like during we're taping this during March. So, getting ready for March Madness. We got high school hoops going on. In fact, that's why I was a little late getting on here, because I had to make sure I was rolling on. We're so close to Iowa. One of our Iowa high school teams, basketball-wise, is playing in that state tournament. So we had to get that rolling. So it's just, there's a lot of stuff going on. And thankfully, you got a good home base that keeps you grounded.
And your kids not only have been involved in sports along the way, I know you have a swimmer, but you've also been very well-versed in dance.
Oh,
Father,
yeah.
you've gotten to enjoy the arts as well. So how was that pivot, getting into the world of competitive dance?
You're a dance dad.
Yeah, I'm a dance dad. Yeah, this is it. This is the end turnaround, the home stretch for the dance dad thing, because my 8th grader, after when she goes into high school, says she's gonna retire from dance, and then obviously my senior in high school has already moved on. But Carrie, and Dan, you may know this, show choir is a huge thing in Omaha, Nebraska. And so both of my kids, actually all three, but really my Sammy, my middle, and Emery, my youngest, are really into show choir. And so, in fact, we're traveling next week down to Orlando for the show choir national championships, because my daughter's high school got invited to participate. So I know spirit fingers.
Impressive.
And I know when to clap during dance breaks. It's a new deal. It's a totally, like, if you would have told me 30 years ago that I'd be dance dad and show choir dad, I'd be like, come on, my kids are gonna play hoops and whatever, softball, whatever. No. My oldest was the one that really was more involved in the athletic side of stuff. Not the other. I mean, obviously, dance is a sport. Actually, show choir is a sport because all the dancing they do. But
highly
traditional
competitive.
sports.
I mean, like you
highly
said,
huge.
Highly competitive. I mean, talk
and
about
subjective too, because I'll watch these things and I'm like, what are these judges seeing that I'm not seeing? Why is that group first and this group is second? I don't understand. I wish there was like a scoreboard that you could watch, because I'm so used to just checking the scoreboard, and then you get done and you're like, wait, that's the way the results were. So it's kind of weird.
Speaking of performing, dance kind of stuff, though you weren't dancing, you were a UW cheerleader in college.
Yeah, I've kept that under wraps for years, Carrie.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, but
that's
I mean,
impressive though.
But you were coming from a football, right? You played football in high school.
Yep.
And then
baseball.
And baseball. You were Mr. Sportsman in high school. And then what made you at UW be like, I'm going to be a cheerleader?
I don't know. We just found a group of friends. Our buddy that Clark Vance was really involved in it. And for the record, I didn't make the cheerleading team. I was added because some kid got kicked off like 2 games into the season. So I was like the late addition. Like, we need a guy to stand in there and then
who can do this and hold the girls up high.
Who was strong enough to hold the girls. And so I got added on, and then right after I joined, my partner like blew her knee out. So
oh no,
they didn't even need to add me but it was a great time. I will say this, like, give those cheerleaders credit. That's a lot of activities. You got to do a whole bunch of stuff. And then I tried out the next year and didn't make it because I couldn't do any of the flips and the tumbles and all that stuff. So
They're
I
always
was
my favorite
merely,
part.
yeah, I was truly along for the ride. But we did get to see some great moments in the UW Fieldhouse, so at least a couple. Like that was some Steve Yoder years for
Yeah.
hoops,
Yep.
and that was a year that Dickie Vitale was in town to do a game, and Wisconsin beat Minnesota at the buzzer, and you could probably see it on YouTube if you can find the clip. Patrick Tompkins, Kurt Portman, last second buzzer beater, and as cheerleaders you're mugging for the cameras. My mom was all fired up. She, there you are, it was great.
Well, and for a guy who wanted to be a sportscaster down the road, I mean, that's kind of a front row seat to kind of what's going on there as well. So that was probably pretty cool.
Great seats, and it was really cool. And some of the people that we were in there, I still keep in contact today. Obviously, Clark is one of my good buddies. And the funny thing is, here's the other connection: is that like Clark, who I mentioned, is another fraternity brother of ours. Went to high school with Carrie's husband, Aaron. They went to high school. In Omaha at Creighton Prep. So I spent some summer vacations here, like summer breaks. We went in Omaha, and he wound up that Carrie, your husband, Aaron, grew up about 6 blocks away from where my wife grew up. But because my wife went to public schools and Aaron went to private high school, they never knew each other. How about that?
Yeah, that was so crazy putting all that together.
Yep.
See, you were meant to be there.
Yeah, meant to be, right.
And while we're on the subject of competition, and Jay did throw down that he is the Pittsville punt, pass, and kick champion, Pittsville, Wisconsin punt, pass, and kick champion. But he was non-remiss. He was very proud to tell everybody that you, of course, your punt, pass, and kick prowess far outdistanced his. Tell folks about your punt, pass, and kick experience.
Number 34, Andy Kendeigh from Arlington Heights. Okay, Andy.
I peaked at age 10. So, in fact, there's my Twitter, or now it's X, I guess. My picture, my profile picture is a still shot of when I was on television for the halftime competition of Punt, Pass, and Kick. I got to compete at a Bears game. And I was the people chuckled because it was like Andy Reid, like the eight-year-old guy is really small, 9-year-old guy, and then there's this ginormous giant, and that's me because I was twice the size of those kids. And then the camera has to dip down again to the 11 and the 12-year-old. So yes, I actually made it to the national semifinals when I was 8 and when I was 10, but again, peaked way too early. Way too early.
Man.
So the national semifinals, was that at like a playoff game in the NFL?
Those were actually, they were at in Tampa because we were an NFC team, we being the Bears, that's who we fed into. And so they had the national semifinals for Punt, Pass, and Kick those years were down at Tampa Stadium. And I got to see Tampa, the Buccaneers, win their very first home game in franchise history because they had just won their first game in franchise history the week before. And then the week later, was the week we were there. That was when I was 8. And then 2 years later, they were competing for a championship with Doug Williams as their quarterback, and I was there. I think they played the Chiefs that day. So great memories. My dad traveled with me for that competition. It was cool. Terrific. And it's funny because all this stuff, and it kind of goes back to show choir and being on stage and dance. And you guys can attest. And Dan, I know you're involved in local theater. Poise, composure.
Oh yeah.
Blocking out all the noise, all that stuff. When the kids learn that at a young age, I think that helps you later in life. And I've seen that with my kids, doing what they do, and then they'll get up. And my senior in high school, Sammy, she's doing this. She's in charge of this philanthropy at their high school, and she's got to go speak to local groups and in front of the schools and at halftime of basketball games. I'm like, Sammy, aren't you just freaking out? She's like, no big deal. I've danced in front of these people before. It's no big deal. So, I mean, that kind of goes back to all that stuff. It teaches you how to deal with all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, don't you think
pressure?
And the kids today too, I mean, they have so much more experience with things like that just because of, social media and everything else, where they grow up with cameras in their face and they're doing things for social media. So I'm amazed at, well, just like your kids in show choir. I mean, some of those choirs, I mean, I was in swing choir when I was in high school, but now it's like professional compared to, we're lucky if we could do a jazz square, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I think the kids these days they log more camera hours before they graduate high school than we have in our entire careers.
Right.
Because
Right. I'm still
they
nervous.
grew up with it. Yeah, they grew up with it. I always tell stories like the kids. You guys don't understand. Like what you guys have is so different than what we grew up with. Like you guys are mugging for the cameras. We had the camcorder. Or even back then we had a film like a Super 8 camera, and if you screwed up a take, you were done because you couldn't just go back and delete. So it's pretty cool to see these kids and what they are able to do at such a young age.
It is. And the level, going back to sports, it's like the level of sports is so different than when we were in school. Like you could pick up a new sport in high school, and you really can't do that anymore. You have to be almost like professional in high school, to make the team. Have you found that throughout your career?
Yeah, that's a kind of a troubling trend. Yeah, it's just, and some of it's kid driven, but a lot of it's parent driven. And, specialization for these kids at a young age, it leads to burnout, et cetera. I was always of the notion and like, do it. If it makes you happy, like, and if you're going to do a sport, you want to make a sport, you're not going to quit, but if you're in it, and you're not going to quit in season, you got to make a decision because it is a commitment. And you just don't see these kids who you see it with the elite athletes. You can see them excel in multiple sports, but it's so very rare to see a crossover athlete that does 2 and even 3 sports these days. And that was kind of the norm when we were younger.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of people who say, yeah, if you spread yourself too thin, you're going to be good at 2 things and not great at 1. And I don't know if I believe that. I am always of the notion that you can if you're that good, people will find you in terms of making sure that, hey, this person's a great basketball player, but they also play volleyball. Well, yeah, the volleyball thing is not going to take you back, but it does cut into your club availability because club sports have just exploded, and you know how that goes.
Yes.
It's an interesting deal. Now, I did have the conversation because personal experience. COVID, my sophomore in college, Carly, we had a conversation after her junior year when COVID canceled her volleyball season. I said, honey, if you want to be a volleyball player and a swimmer, that's great. You're juggling stuff and you're doing show choir. I get it. But you could be a great swimmer if you just dedicate your stuff for swimming. You could be a good swimmer and a good volleyball player, but I think you got a higher ceiling in swimming. And she's like, you know what? I don't even love volleyball anymore. Let's just go into swimming. And she did it. And her senior year, she had a great senior year, and she got to swim at state, and it was a really terrific deal. So I think every situation is a little different, but I think in general, it is troubling to see the specializations of kids at such a young age. My oldest did it between junior and senior year. We're talking kids who do it at 8 years old, and it's like, you know what? Go play, just be active and get outside and get off your screens, right?
Yeah, develop a love of movement and the socialization and the teamwork and the commitment, all that comes with sports.
Teamwork and competition, the drive to succeed. I mean, that's all that's going to help you later in life.
Well, the bottom line is, like you said, if your daughter would have said, yeah, but I really love playing volleyball still.
Great.
You'd have said, fine, then keep it up. But she said it herself. She didn't. So then, she kind of made the decision already.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I'm all for kids doing what, like Sammy my senior had a tough decision. She could have kept dancing, and she could have juggled dancing and show choir. They're in the same season. And what do I mean by season? Well, there's competitions for her dance team at the high school. And so it's tough to do both. It's been done, but I think there's been 1 or 2 kids who've done it, but it's very tough. And then you feel like, oh, they're making all these bending over backwards for me. And so Sammy said, you know what, I really want to do the show choir thing. I've done my thing with dance. I know I've danced all my life, but I really want to do the show choir. And it does help that there's some dancing elements in show choir too. So that's what she did. And I said, yeah, let's do it. Great. And my the wallet helps too. The wallet thanks her too.
Carrie is very well accustomed to the dancing because she was kind of a professional dancer for a while too. Weren't you at was it Six Flags or something, or where
I was at Fiesta,
cruise
Texas.
ships and cruise ship?
No, Julie. Remember?
Your
my friend Julie was on a cruise ship in college, but I worked at Fiesta, Texas.
Fiesta,
in
Texas.
San Antonio. That was my summer job, singing, dancing, acting. That
Cool.
was phenomenal. Yeah, but in the olden days, when I was there, every show had its own orchestra or band. There were no click tracks where you would just play
Wow.
recorded music. So I mean that park, and it was Opryland would tour all the college campuses to do auditions, and that's where I auditioned. I put on my little leotard and went, got my tap shoes out, and even though I don't tap, I faked it very well. And I auditioned at UW, and that's how I got cast in this show in Texas. It was so fun. But I mean, I'm still friends with those people. I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
So you were a professional singer and dancer. How about
Well,
that?
I guess.
Yes.
Short
Yeah, you
time.
get paid. You got paid.
I did get paid.
You're pro.
I did get
You're
paid.
pro.
Well, she's still a professional singer because she has her duo Happy Hour, which performs.
That's right. I
So-
just started a new band in my empty
Oh.
nesterdom. We are a duo called Happy Hour. Book
Oh.
us near you.
All right. Okay.
Available
We
for
might need a
hire.
band. All right. That's good to know.
Andy,
Yeah.
you mentioned before that, you kind of were rushing to get to this this conversation today because of high school sports, and obviously it's the basketball season. But when you were in Madison, and Jay talked about this as well, you guys kind of owned the state tournaments for basketball, and I think it was hockey too. Is that kind of how it is for you there in Lincoln now as well? Are you still doing something like that only in Lincoln?
It's funny you mentioned Jay. So I was talking to Jay on the way in to work today. So
Okay.
yeah, so we keep in touch all the time. I mean, and I
Yeah.
cannot tell you how many life lessons, job lessons, whatever that he has taught me over the years that I use that I didn't even know. It was like, oh, this is what Jay used to do. Oh, this is what Jay was, Jay used to do this. So I know it's right. One of those deals. So he still
Yep.
teaches me without even going out of his way to teach me.
Hmm.
But to your point about, we did a lot of WIA stuff. We did the hoops and hockey, and then he was also involved in some football as well, and he got me into that as well, which I appreciated that. And here in Nebraska, the public television station in Nebraska Public Media, takes care of all the high school championships, at least the finals.
Oh.
And
Okay.
I have weaseled my way into the sidelines for boys and girls basketball. So last week was the girls basketball.
Way to
week.
go.
This weekend is boys. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Oh,
it's a lot of
nice.
fun. It's a lot,
Yeah.
getting back to when I was kind of poo-pooing the whole specialization and what have you. But I will say this, there's nothing like being at a state basketball tournament, and when you have the crowd buzzed up and ready to roll, and they're all fired up, and having the student participation and the electricity in the air, there's nothing like that. And we had it last weekend for a few of the games for the girls, and this weekend for the boys. I'm sure it's going to be the same way. It's just every year, I've covered it in Wisconsin, covered it here. They play the state finals here in Nebraska, where the University of Nebraska plays their home games at Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln. It's just a cool event. They'll get crowds of upwards 6,000-7,000 for finals, and sometimes even more. I've been to games where they had to open the upper deck and it'd be 12,000-13,000 people there. So it's
awesome.
it's a cool deal. It's a cool deal. And I will say this, without the benefit of having pro sports in the state of Nebraska, and that's unique to this market in this area, they really throw their weight, their sporting support behind Nebraska, Creighton, UNO, and then all the high school stuff. And it's pretty cool. There's a minor league baseball team here in town as well. And now we just have a professional volleyball team who just started this year. So they get behind their local sports here, and it's pretty impressive.
Was that
That's
a hard
cool.
transition for you to go from all of the professional sports in Wisconsin to none?
It was a little bit of a transition. The bigger transition, I'm going to go a little inside baseball here for you guys. And I know Carrie and Dan, you guys will understand this, but
Love
being
it.
in Omaha, we didn't have a trading partner. So like in Madison, if you wanted something on the Packers and you didn't go cover the practice that day, you'd call up Green Bay and say, hey, Green Bay, hey, your affiliate, hey, do you have something on X, Y, or Z? And they say, yeah, we'll send it down. And hey, Milwaukee, did you guys go talk to Brewers post game last night? Sure, they'll send it along. Here, I get in and I'm like, there's nobody. Yeah, we have an ABC affiliate in Lincoln, but we don't trade with them because of a long-standing disagreement that happened way before my time. So we have a
Hatfields
guy
and the
who,
McCoys.
yeah. We have a guy who covers Lincoln for us, but it's one guy, and he's usually covering stuff at the Capitol. So that's the biggest change. I love covering college, always have loved covering college, and I love covering high schools. But it was a little bit of an adjustment after coming here. And it seemed like once I left Milwaukee in the state of Wisconsin, everybody really started winning. Like I covered the first practice for the Super Bowl championship here in 2010. And then I left, and then they go and win the Super Bowl, and I'm gone. And then Wisconsin goes to another Rose Bowl after I leave, and I'm like, I think we found out the problem here.
You were like, it's me, or what's the Taylor Swift song? It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say before though, you were the lucky charm because you were the Rose Bowl impetus in 1993, and then you went over to where was it? Milwaukee, and didn't the
Brewers started to get good, and the Bucks started to get good.
Were getting good. So
you were good luck. Yeah. And I was in Madison when the Packers won their Super Bowl with Favre. That was an incredible season, and it was a cool transition being in Milwaukee when the Brewers started to get good. That magical year with CC Sabathia, the trade there, and they made the push to the playoffs. The Bucks stuff was unbelievable with Big Dog and Ray Allen and Sam Cassell. That run to the Eastern Conference Finals. Those were awesome teams. George Karl was the coach. And not even to mention, remember when the Badgers made it to the Final Four? I got to cover that with Dick Bennett in 2000. And then when I was in Milwaukee when Dwayne Wade just tore it up in 2003 and got to cover that Final Four run. And those two, covering Final Fours, that is my favorite thing to do. It's just so awesome. It's such a great event. And I hope before I call it a career that I get to do it again.
I do too.
Yeah. I'll hope that for you.
Thank you.
Now we should bring up one other thing in your past with my husband. And that is no. The long-standing famous PEXFL.
Yes.
Are you the champ?
Dan, I'm not the champ, but I'm the commissioner.
Commissioner. He is the commissioner of this fantasy football team that we talked with. We talked with Jay about as well.
Mm-hmm.
That has been going on since you guys were in college, right?
Since about right after college. Is probably 91, 92. I think this was our 32nd season that we just finished up. And honest to God, I was on the golf course with your husband and a couple other fraternity brothers at a golf course in Harvard, Illinois, and we made up the rules on a cocktail napkin. Literally, we made up the rules on a cocktail napkin, and we said, "This is what we're going to do," because fantasy baseball is just getting big, and that's what we did. We got a group of fraternity brothers. Now it's changed a little bit over the years, but there's probably 10, 12 guys that still to this day compete in this fantasy football league. Now we don't get together like for the draft like we used to.
Yeah.
It's all online.
It used to be a fun party.
It used to be. And here's the biggest thing. Now we talk about technology, and this is the biggest change over the industry in 30 years that we've been in. Is back then we used to go get a USA Today, and Aaron and I, Carrie's husband, we'd get a USA Today with all the box scores on Monday, and then we would sift through the box scores and hand tabulate the scores, and then I would have to send out via snail mail the update every week. I would 12 envelopes in the mailbox by Tuesday, or else they wouldn't get there before the weekend.
That's how it's a lot harder to be the commissioner for sure. Now no online question. It's a lot easier. Yeah.
And we were talking too. It's like I was trying to explain, and when I was talking to this college class I just talked to, and I said, listen, back then, before the internet, when we were doing our jobs every night, we would actually physically have to pick up a phone and call Williams Arena for the updated Wisconsin, Minnesota basketball score. And there'd be somebody on press roll whose job was to answer the phone and give people updates for updated scores. And that's how we used to do it. And the other thing that I kind of find funny, and Jay and I kind of chuckle about this from time to time when we talk, we would have to block out 50 seconds a night for American League baseball scores, National League baseball scores, full screens on that. Now you just put it at the bottom of the screen, and that's your ticker, and you just move on. So it's interesting too how that has all evolved, because people, the thought process is that you can get the scores from anywhere, whatever, if you want to see the stories and the local stuff. So and that's cool, and that's where we're at.
When you cover high school sports, though, I remember back in the day, you'd get we'd be getting calls in the newsroom all night long from athletic directors or coaches or whatever with scores. Do you still get that, or is it pretty much all on Twitter now or X?
I would say we get about, maybe on a Friday night, on a football Friday, we probably get 10 to 15 calls when it used to be about 70, you know, and maybe 15 is too much. Maybe it's 5 to 10. And I remember too, on a Friday night with Jay going, hey, we need a score from Dodgeville. And I'm like, oh, isn't there a Hardee's in Dodgeville or a McDonald's? Let's call the McDonald's in Dodgeville. And so you'd call the McDonald's and say, hey, is there anybody who went to the Dodgeville game tonight? And the manager, hey, anybody, you kids go to the Dodgeville game tonight? What was the final? 20 to 17. Okay. Yeah, 20 to 17. Thanks. That's how you got the score sometimes.
My gosh.
Sometimes.
That's amazing.
When we were desperate.
Well, the bad part about not getting calls from, like, say, the AD or the coach is, I mean, you could also get a quick, you know, hey, so what'd you think of the game or whatever. You could get a quick too if you needed that. Now it's probably a little harder to get that.
No question. But sometimes now you will see the video of what happened, and you'll be like, oh, that can help, but it also can hurt, because you're like, oh my goodness, this AD shot this great 3-pointer. And this actually happened to me last week, Dan, where somebody hit a 3-pointer to send that team to state. And I'm like, well, I got to get this in, right? Like, there's no excuse for not getting this in. This is a state sending shot to send this high school to the state tournament. And this is the AD who shot it, so it's fair game. You just put his courtesy up there. And so, you know, you kind of work around, you change your rundown a little bit, but it's also 10-15, you know, one of those deals. So it's a mixed blessing, right? It's great that you get these updated scores, but it's also, you know, hey, there's really no excuse if you don't have these things now.
There's so much video and so much, you know, digital information out there now. Even for doing these podcasts that we're doing, I can find so much on YouTube. I mean, I found so much on Jay Wilson on YouTube that you know, and I'm sure it'll be the same for you, Andy. I mean, there's just so much out there that it's almost overwhelming what you're speaking to there. It's overwhelming. There's so much information out there, digital information.
Yes. Yeah. There's an old Police song, Too Much Information. It's off the Ghost of the Machine album. And that kind of reminds me of that, because it's really, and that was back in the 80s, they're talking about it, and think about where we're at now. But I will say, the dean of Madison Sportscasters, he deserves every YouTube hit there is, because he's got, I mean, think about that. You type in Jay Wilson, Madison TV, and it's like, you know, so a legend.
Yeah. Well, you two are an excellent team together.
Well, he's the best, and he's really the reason, you know, I'm doing what I'm doing today. And you know, he taught me so many things, just like, not necessarily nuts and bolts, this is how you block a show, blah blah blah. I mean, yeah, he did that too, but more watching him in a public setting and how he treats people and how he goes about his business. And it was pretty eye-opening. I remember going out to dinner with him at, like, Rocky Rococo's or whatever, because it used to be that Rocky Rococo's. I think they bulldozed that whole strip mall.
It was over in Whitney Way there, right?
Yeah. And we would go there because it was close, and people knew him, and just the way he would interact with people. Like, he's a marked guy. He's been doing it in the local market for 30 years. People knew who he was, and he's always nice. He was always kind to people, and that's saying something, because I've been around when he wasn't in the best of moods, and he still had time to say hello and kind of shoot the breeze, if you will.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Well, and something we realized in talking with you and Scott Klug coming up in an upcoming episode. Actually, it would have already aired by now, right? Because
by the time this one hits,
again, it will already drop. It will have already.
It will have dropped
already.
That's what we say in the podcast world. But anywho, so we talking with Jay, Scott Klug, you, so that we need to start a little map of all the Godfathers. So help me if I'm saying all this wrong, but I believe you are a god. Well, obviously I already said you're a godfather to our son, Brady. You are a godfather, the godfather, and you're a godfather to Jay's child, one of Jay's children. And then I believe, was it that Jay is a godfather of one of Scott's children, I think, or vice versa. Yes, I have that right. Yeah, we need to start a little WKOW map of all the godfathers, the godparents.
And I will tell you this: I saw Brett at the Wisconsin-Nebraska football game, and we were in between quarters and whatever, and Brett comes up to me. He's got a bag, and he's like, "Here you go," because he works for the university right now. He works for that the marketing arm at EW, and
Cool.
I get this back, Brad, what is this? And it was like some Badger gear, and I'm like, that's so nice. Like, that is cool. There you go.
Awesome.
Now, I will say that I probably could have done a better job in leading both the son Brady and Brett into maybe a warmer path spiritually, but hopefully just by when I have been able to chat and see him, that hopefully I've given some life lessons along the way.
Well, Brady did end up at a Catholic university, so
See, there you go.
Well, thank you, Andy, for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm still waiting for Aaron to.
We're not going to throw you under the bus here, but Jay said, your spiritual guidance of his son has been a little bit
lacking.
little bit lacking.
A little lacking.
So,
yeah. There's no question. I'll be the first to admit. No question. No question about it.
Hey, there's still time. There is still time. You got a lot of time.
There's always time.
He's a young man.
He turned out great. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Right.
Great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Andy, I always ask people there, we talked about like your first job in TV, and I what's your worst job that you've had in TV, if you care to share that with us?
In TV or out?
It could be out too. It could be either.
I had to pull a couple dishwashing shifts at Chili and a Pizza Hut. Aaron and I used to work at Pizza Hut. Remember that one?
You guys did everything together.
Yeah. I did have a job one summer in between my senior year in high school and freshman year in college that I was a shoe warehouse stock man. Ooh. It was for Adidas. It was a local Adidas distributor. It was the worst. And if there was a job that I was like, I want to get in it, I'm going to work hard. And so it was taxing. It was hard. It was tough. That was a tough summer, but the cool people I worked with, they were great, but man, it was a hard job. But stocking shelves all day. Yeah. Lugging cases and cases of shoes to make sure that they're in the right place. So when they do need deliveries and you're filling orders, people know where to go in the right places. So that was probably the toughest. I was dish guy for quite a few shifts at Chili's. Well, Pizza Hut, there was a couple, you had to fill that darn salad bar and clean the sneeze guard. That was always kind of like, do we need more radishes? We need more radishes. My gosh, who's eating these radishes? Got to go back in the refrigerator. It was terrible.
Well, when there's not radishes, people get pissed.
I know. They want the radishes on their salad bar and a clean sneeze guard because there was smudges and some filth and muck on them. It was not
good. Damn garbanzo beans.
Yes, the garbanzo beans, right?
When you think they always get in the wrong thing in the wrong bin. They're rolling around.
People are sloppy. People are overloading their salad bowls. They got garbanzo beans falling into the cheese, and you're like, now we're doing it. And there was cottage cheese too, and it's like, and your
cottage
job
cheese
is to go
and pudding should never mix. Is there a job you're still thirsting for, or something in your life you're still thirsting for?
Retirement.
There you go.
Yeah,
you're not that far.
You're
not
getting
that
ready.
far away.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to formulate a plan. Like, how long can I or should I do what I'm doing, or can I do something else to bridge the gap between? You know what I mean? I'm going through those internal conversations. Watching what Jay's doing. Because Jay's very involved. He's doing a bunch of freelance announcing, whether it's Big Ten events and what have you, and he's doing a great job in terms of and he's keeping busy and he's making money. I'm like, God, that sounds like a great idea if we can pull it off. But we'll see. I don't know. There's not one job though. It's not like, I've been through the whole, I want to work at ESPN. That was the dream in the 90s and early 2000s, but that ship has sailed and I'm totally fine with, I've seen people move on and gone there and friends with some people who have gone those places, and it's all good. You root for your friends to do well, and that's cool. And I'm happy with what's transpired with me.
Right.
Well, as Ron Burgundy said, ESPN will never be anything. It'll never amount to anything.
That's right. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Well, and it was nice for you, quality life of pardon the wind as it's blowing my hair everywhere, that you could land in Omaha with Wendy's family there, and to have such a wonderful quality of life for your children, and you weren't moving all over the place. Like it seems like a really good blend of career and family. Yeah, no doubt. And Wendy's mom being here was such a perk. She was
she was one of the huge reasons why. And at that point, we had 3 young children, and Emery had just been born in 2009, and Wendy's mom passed in 2016, but those 6 years for my kids, they will cherish. They still to this day call Nana their favorite human. All 3 of them do, and rightfully so. That was such a cool connection. And Dan, you're a grandpa right now, right?
I am. We just had our second grandchild.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thanks.
awesome.
Yeah, beautiful.
And but from what I hear, when we're getting to the age where people are starting to have grandkids and stuff, and they say there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And from my perspective, watching my kids with Wendy's mom, it's just awesome. Just to see that, and that was worth it right there. So that was a cool deal, and it was meant to be.
You'll get there soon enough. Yeah. It's great to be a grandparent.
Not too soon.
But
not too soon.
You don't want to get there
no
too
rush,
soon.
girls. My question that I always like to ask is, looking back over your 30-year career, were there bloopers that still stay in your mind that you chuckle about whenever you think about them? Or you cringe? Either way.
Who said Paul Bunyan's ass? Was that you?
That was me.
That was scary.
Yeah. I bring that up every once in a while.
The college talks.
Yeah.
Paul Bunyan's ass.
Yeah.
Axe,
It's a big trophy. It's a big trophy.
It is.
I had
a few cracks in it now.
Yeah. I had one my first year here in Omaha, and I'm just trying my best. I'm trying hard. I want people to accept me, and whatever. And I'm standing outside, and there was a doubleheader basketball game, and I said the team that's playing, and they said the line was supposed to be they were going to start at 8:00, so I said it's an 8:00 tip, except I didn't say I dropped the L, and I said 8 tip, and I was like, oh, that didn't come out right, and so we just kind of move on.
Oops.
Move on. I do remember one though in Madison. We remember the Satellite Center. You guys were there for the set. Yeah. So remember when Nebraska? See, I do this all the time.
Ingrained.
When Wisconsin.
It's got to be hard.
It is really hard, and their uniforms are so similar.
I know, darn it.
Oh my goodness.
Get your own color.
My first couple years, I was like, oh my goodness, it's like inverses of each other. Anyways, so Wisconsin is playing Michigan State, and they're playing in Japan, of all places, if you remember, because that was the Rose Bowl year in '93. Yep. Because they sold off a home game and they could play in the Tokyo Bowl or whatever. That's where they clinched the spot in the Rose Bowl. And so I was in the Satellite Center getting updates, but I was actually watching and editing in the sports office, which was around the corner. And they came to me and I wasn't there because they had added another hit and that type of thing. And that was a little embarrassing. And I got one more. Oh my God.
The satellite had gone out of orbit, so you had a good excuse.
Yes. Yeah. So after that same Rose Bowl year, so '93, they beat UCLA. It is a wonderful, wonderful deal. And there really wasn't a great amount of planning statewide about what we were going to do. Maybe there was, and I just wasn't involved in it. So I didn't really know. Yeah, I must have missed the meeting. I must have missed the Teams or the Zoom that day back in '93. And so they were planning on having Tom Sutton. Remember Tom? He was the Milwaukee, Lake Geneva guy, right? And Tom was going to anchor the statewide post-game show to affiliates across the state, including WKOW. But WISN was driving that boat. And, well, we were done with local breaks. Now it's time for the special, and they weren't ready out in California. And Jay's out in California. And I was sitting on set, not knowing if we were going to be on. I was just a backup, just in case everything went to hell.
Oh,
and I was like, maybe I should cut some highlights just in case. So I had highlights.
Oh, you did?
And then
good.
I did cut highlights. And remember Gibby, Dan?
Oh yeah,
the director. Yeah.
Dan Gibby.
So Dan Gibby's in the director's chair, and he's like, and I know this because I recorded it, and then I recorded it with the director track. I should put this on YouTube. So I put this, and you hear Dan go, "What do we do? What do we do? Swear word, swear word, swear word. What do we do? Take Andy, go." And so all of a sudden the light comes on, and I have to fill. until Milwaukee's until the post game show gets going. And so luckily we had some highlights that we could just BS to, and I just kind of ad-libbed the highlights. So that was not really a blooper, but that was one of my early oh my goodness,
a good dancing job. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was 6 months into the job. But I will say that the beauty of having gone through that, then after you get done with that, you're like, well, if I could get through that, I don't know what else you could get thrown at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of gain confidence from it. And that was even though I didn't go to the Rose Bowl that year, it was still an awesome experience because I got a lot of innings, as they say, or repetitions. And that kind of taught me how to really do it on a day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we let you go, do you have advice for the next generation of sports broadcasters?
Oh my goodness.
Where
don't be
I
money
begin?
motivated. Yeah. Don't be money motivated. Don't be money motivated.
Period.
I'll tell you, if I will say, if you love it, go do it. And don't get caught up on one job, because you never know where that job is, if that job's even going to exist when you get to that point. So prepare yourself the best you can. Know how to be versatile, because this business is going to be different in the next 10 years. Who knows if there will even be local news in 10 years? I really don't know if there will be in the form that we know it now. Will there be a 5, a 6? Because we have right now, we have a 4. Or no, we have a 4, we have a 5, we have a 6, we have a 9, we have a 10, and we have 2.5 hours in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And that's every day. Yeah. So what is that going to look like with the, and let's be honest, programming, not just ABC, but across the board.
Right.
What drives live viewership? It's live sports and NFL football and a few other things, but that's about it. So what is local television going to look like in 10 years? That's why I say, when you kids learn how to do everything. Well, I don't want to be a camera person. I don't want to know how to shoot. You know what? If you know how to shoot, you're going to know how to do other things later in life. I don't want to know how to do things in the control room. You know what? That might be part of it 10 years down the road. You might have to set up a Zoom and record and then edit and all that stuff, because, even doing what I'm doing 30 years in, I still have to edit my own stuff. I still write all my stuff. I create all my own graphics. And that's something we didn't always have to do, but you have to do it. So the versatility piece is very important.
Good advice. Good advice. That's for almost any industry nowadays.
Yeah, no doubt, because it changes. Like what you do, and Carrie, I'm sure you see it. Like what you're doing now is different than what you were doing 4 or 5 years ago, even though in theory it's quote unquote the same.
Absolutely. Well, Andy Kendeigh, so good to have you on Old
So
News.
good.
So good. We appreciate your time and your expertise and your insight. It was
and
great.
your good humor.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dan. It's great to see you. Great to hear that you're doing great. And congratulations on being a grandparent twice over. That's awesome. And good luck with your shows coming up.
Thanks a lot.
And Carrie, I'm trying to get out to the Berg.
I know we've got the guest room ready for you.
I know. We got to coordinate a weekend, because Aaron was telling me that he's got something on tap. I believe Diet Coke, some special version of Diet Coke. I can't wait to have.
The double tapper in the basement definitely has Diet Coke. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Wink, wink.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Great talking to you. Great talking to you, Andy.
Good talking to you guys.
All right.
Thanks,
bye, Andy.
Thanks for tuning in to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
That's old news for now.
Join us next time.